The day started like any other on the film set. Yet something invisible hung in the air, something quiet but heavy, almost like a secret waiting to be discovered. The crew moved around with usual rhythm. Lights were being adjusted, cameras were being checked, and the soft echo of instructions floated across the room. But there was one person who seemed out of sync with the world around her. Sandra Bullock was there physically, but her mind was somewhere far away. Her eyes held a silent storm, and every movement she made was careful, controlled, almost tense, as if she feared slipping even once. The others noticed it, but nobody asked. In this industry, people learn quickly that silence is a shield. But there was someone on that set who did not ignore it. Keanu Reeves watched her from a distance, not in a dramatic or intense way, but the way someone observes a person they respect and do not want to disturb. He did not approach her. He did not question her. He simply noticed. Sometimes silence is louder than questions, and he understood that. What no one else knew was that Sandra had been carrying something for weeks, something she had hidden behind smiles and practiced laughter. For most people, she was the strong one, the poised one, the woman who handled everything with grace. But that image of strength had begun to feel like a mask glued too tightly to her skin. The first sign of the crack appeared when she dropped a folder near the director's table. Papers scattered across the floor, and she reacted faster than anyone expected. Almost panicked. She grabbed one particular page and hid it under her arm before anyone could see it. It was a small moment, only a few seconds long, but Keanu saw the urgency in her eyes. That was not the reaction of someone who dropped meaningless paper. That was the reaction of someone who dropped a part of their truth. She stood up, forced a soft joke, brushed it off, and returned to her mark. The crew laughed politely, but her hands trembled when she thought no one was looking. The day continued, and every scene felt heavier for her. She forgot a line at one point, something she rarely did. It was such a simple sentence, yet her mind froze. Someone behind the camera whispered that maybe she was tired, maybe she was distracted, maybe she was losing her edge. She heard it. She pretended she did not, but the words cut her deeper than they intended. Keanu still did not speak. He just observed, the way someone observes a fragile object not because it is weak, but because the world around it is too rough. During lunch break, she walked away from the noise, holding a cup she did not drink from. She stood behind one of the trailers, breathing slowly like someone trying to calm a hurricane inside their chest. She did not cry. She had already cried in silence days before. Now she felt something worse than sadness. She felt exposed. Like the truth she had buried all her life was getting closer to the surface, and she no longer had the strength to push it down. Her thoughts were loud. What if they find out? What if they judge me? What if everything I built becomes a joke? What if the one person I respect the most looks at me differently? That last thought hurt her the most. She was not scared of critics. She was not scared of tabloids. She was scared of Keanu Reeves seeing her through a different lens. He had been a symbol of calm strength to her for years, someone who spoke softly but carried depth in every sentence. She admired him in a way that had nothing to do with fame and everything to do with character. And the idea of disappointing someone like that made her heart ache. She leaned her back against the metal surface behind her and shut her eyes. She had carried this secret since she was young. It had shaped her choices, her fears, and even her success. She thought she had outrun it. She thought she had proven herself enough to bury it forever. But life has a way of circling back, reminding people that unfinished parts of their past never stay buried for long. That paper she hid earlier was not a script page. It was not a contract. It was a reminder of a life she abandoned and never spoke about. A reminder of the girl she used to be before the cameras, before the fame, before the world expected perfection from her. She opened her eyes slowly and whispered to herself, almost like a confession, I cannot hide this anymore. She knew there would come a moment when she had to face it, and she had a feeling that moment was close. She knew she had to tell someone before someone else exposed her. And even though she feared judgment, she knew there was only one person she could speak to, the only one who would listen without ego, the only one who would not turn her truth into a weapon. She had to tell Keanu, but she was terrified. Not because she feared anger, not because she feared rejection, but because true respect is rare. And she did not want to lose his. The afternoon continued, and she could not focus. Every time she looked at him, she imagined how the conversation might go. What if he thought less of her? What if he was disappointed? What if she ruined years of quiet respect between them? The fear curled inside her ribs like a knot. The crew reset the lights for the final shot of the day. She stood at her mark. Keanu walked into the scene beside her. The director gave instructions, but she barely heard them. Her pulse drowned everything out. This was not just a workday anymore. This was a countdown. The moment she would speak was getting closer, like a clock ticking in her mind. For the first time in years, she forgot how to pretend she was okay. They filmed the scene. She delivered the lines smoothly, yet inside she felt like she was walking on thin glass. Keanu delivered his lines with calm precision as always, but his eyes held something she could not ignore anymore. He did not look at her like an actor in a scene. He looked at her like a person who sensed the storm behind her controlled expression. When the director finally said cut and everyone clapped, she felt no relief. She felt a decision forming in her chest, heavy but necessary. She walked toward him, each step slow and deliberate, like someone walking toward truth after running from it for years. He turned slightly before she reached him. He already knew she wanted to speak. He said nothing. He just gave a small nod, the kind that said he was ready to listen whenever she was ready to speak. Her voice almost failed, but she forced the first sentence. "Can we talk in private?" Simple words, but they carried the weight of her past, her fear, her truth. Keanu looked at her with quiet focus, not a single trace of judgment in his expression. He nodded again and stepped aside from the crowd. And in that moment, she realized something important. Sometimes the most frightening part of telling the truth is not the truth itself. It is the space between hiding and revealing, the space where you stand alone, waiting to see if the world will shatter you or hold you. She took a breath. Her hands shook. And she finally accepted that this conversation might change everything. But not speaking would destroy her even more. This would not be a scripted scene with guaranteed comfort. This was real. This was human. This was the moment when respect would either break or rise, and she had no idea which one it would be. The set grew quieter as the crew packed away equipment, leaving behind scattered cables, fading light, and the soft echo of footsteps heading toward the exit. Sandra stood still for a moment, watching people leave, feeling the world move around her while her own heartbeat felt frozen in place. She knew this moment was unavoidable now. She had asked for it. She had chosen it. Yet her body still reacted as if she had walked voluntarily into fire. Keanu waited a short distance away, not rushing her, not insisting, simply giving space. That alone made her chest tighten with emotion. Some people offer comfort with words. Keanu did it with presence, the kind that did not demand anything in return. She finally walked toward him. Every step made her feel both lighter and heavier at the same time. Lighter because she was tired of hiding. Heavier because the truth she carried had lived inside her for so long that taking it out felt like tearing a part of herself open. They walked to a quiet corner near the back of the studio lot, away from cameras, assistants, and curious eyes. The faint sound of distant traffic filled the silence. There was no background music, no rehearsed lines, no director to yell action. It was only two people, two hearts, and one truth trying to break free. Keanu turned to face her with a gentle expression, not forcing eye contact, simply letting her know he was fully there. For a moment, Sandra could not speak. Her throat tightened, as if the words were tied to the weight in her chest. She had spoken in interviews, speeches, films, award stages, yet this simple private moment felt harder than all of them combined. Something about truth makes even strong people feel small. Keanu sensed the struggle and said quietly, "Take your time." Those 3 words were not dramatic. They were not poetic, but they were exactly what she needed. No pressure, no expectation, just space. She took a slow breath, but her hands still trembled. She held them together, trying to keep them still, but her mind was already running back through memories she never wanted to revisit. She remembered being young, sitting at a desk in a small room, trying to study while her mother worked late shifts. She remembered the night she left school, promising she would return one day after her dreams were stable. She remembered how she never returned, how the years passed, how success replaced education, but never erased the insecurity that formed inside her. She looked at him and spoke in a quiet voice. "I need to tell you something, but I do not know if you will look at me the same after I say it." Keanu did not react with surprise. He just listened, truly listened, and that made her eyes burn with emotion. "I have been hiding something for years," she continued, her voice shaking, "because I thought people would judge me if they knew, and maybe they still will. But I cannot keep pretending anymore." The wind moved a strand of her hair across her face, and she brushed it back slowly. She could feel her heartbeat in her fingertips. Every second she waited made the confession feel heavier. Keanu did not interrupt. He did not ask what it was. He did not fill the silence with empty reassurance. He gave her respect, and respect is sometimes the most powerful form of comfort. She looked away for a moment, her eyes focusing on nothing, as if speaking to the air made it safer than saying it to a person. "I built a career where people think I am strong, intelligent, confident, but part of me has always been afraid someone will find out the truth. And today, I almost dropped it in front of everyone." Keanu understood instantly what she meant. Not the content, but the feeling. The fear of exposure. The fear of a private wound becoming public. She continued with a deeper ache in her voice. "I have lived so many years trying to prove I deserve to be here, that I forgot I never finished something important. I never closed a chapter I was scared to admit even existed, and now it has followed me all the way into this life." Her eyes filled, not dramatic tears, but the kind that appear when a lifetime of pressure finally leaks through the cracks. "I thought you might judge me if I told you," she said, her voice soft and fragile, "because you always seem so balanced and wise, and I did not want to look small in front of you." Keanu looked at her with the calm of someone who had seen many kinds of human pain. His expression did not change. There was no shock, no confusion, no judgment, only patience. But the silence made her panic again. Silence from the wrong person can feel like rejection, even when it is not. She felt her breath shorten and forced herself to continue before fear won again. "When I dropped that page earlier, it was not a script," she said. "It was a reminder of what I ran away from. And the more success I got, the more I felt like a fraud for not finishing the one thing I left behind. I have carried that guilt for years, and every time I try to forget, something brings it back." She paused, shaking slightly, then whispered what she feared most. "I thought you would look at me differently. I thought you would think I was less." Keanu finally spoke. His voice was steady, low, gentle. "I could never think you are less." The words were simple, but they reached her in a way no applause or award ever had. She felt her heart loosen just a little, but the fear was still there. She had not revealed everything yet. She had only opened the door. The truth still waited inside her, begging to be spoken. She sat on a metal step behind the studio, her posture collapsing as if her body was tired from years of holding itself upright. Keanu quietly sat beside her, not above her, not in front of her, just next to her. Equal. That gesture alone broke her more than any harsh word ever could, because real kindness is silent, and it shows itself in actions, not speeches. She took another long breath, ready to finally tell him everything, but before she could speak, her phone vibrated with a message. She glanced at the screen and her face changed, not in fear, not in relief, but in shock. The message came from someone she had not spoken to in years, someone connected to the past she had tried to bury, someone who could expose her truth if she did not take control of it first. Her eyes widened. Her heart started racing again. The world felt smaller, tighter, louder. Keanu noticed the shift and asked gently, "Are you all right?" She looked at him with storm in her eyes and said quietly, "This is not just my secret anymore. Someone else knows. And if they decide to talk before I do, everything changes." The silence that followed was heavy, not awkward, not empty, just heavy with the weight of a truth that was now more urgent than ever. She closed her eyes and whispered, "I do not know how much time I have before this comes out." Keanu stayed calm, his tone steady. The kind of steady that can hold another person together when they feel like falling apart. Then tell it in your voice, he said, not in someone else's. She looked at him again, and this time, the fear in her eyes started to shift into something else. Maybe strength, maybe acceptance, maybe the beginning of freedom. Her confession was no longer a choice. It had become a deadline, and the next thing she would speak would decide how the world saw her, how she saw herself, and whether the respect she feared losing would be lost, or transformed into something even stronger. The message on Sandra's phone kept glowing on the screen like a silent threat, a reminder that the past she tried to bury was no longer sleeping. She stared at it for a long time, not moving, not blinking, as if her mind was frozen between fear and acceptance. She had thought she still had control over her secret. Now she was not sure anymore. Keanu waited beside her without asking any questions. He understood something that most people never learn. Sometimes a person does not need answers. They need space to breathe before they speak. Finally, Sandra locked her phone, placed it face down, and whispered, "I think I need to tell you everything now." Keanu nodded slowly, still silent, not pushing her forward, not holding her back. His calmness did not remove her fear, but it made the fear less poisonous. She took a deep breath, the kind that shakes on the way in, and began. "I grew up in a small home with a mother who worked every hour she could. She never complained, but life was heavy on her shoulders. She wanted to give me a chance she never had. She wanted me to study, to be someone, to not repeat her struggle." Her voice softened as memories surfaced, not just in words, but in emotion. "I loved school. I loved learning. But when money ran out, and when life became more about survival than dreams, I had to leave. I told myself it was temporary. I told myself I would go back. I said I would return after I made it, but then I never did. I chased acting. I chased opportunity. I chased the life I thought would save us, and in a way it did. But something inside me never healed." She paused, not because she forgot what to say, but because she had never spoken this out loud, not even to herself in full sentences. People see the fame, the awards, the interviews. They think success erases the past, but it does not. It only hides it under brighter lights. Keanu listened with full attention, not blinking away, not looking at his phone, not trying to turn her pain into a lesson, just present. "Just human," she continued. "I always felt like I was pretending to be smart enough, pretending to be complete. Every time someone called me talented, I smiled. But every time someone called me educated, I felt like an imposter. I could memorize scripts. I could perform scenes. But I still avoided conversations about books or degrees because I did not want anyone to know." Her eyes dimmed slightly as another truth surfaced. "People think I walked into this industry with confidence. They do not know how many nights I stayed awake praying no one would discover the truth. Not because I am ashamed of where I came from, but because I thought if they knew, they would think I was less worthy, less intelligent, less everything." She swallowed hard before continuing. "And today, when I dropped that paper and you looked at me, I felt like my world was seconds away from breaking. I thought if you saw it, if you knew, you would look at me differently. Maybe not with cruelty, but with that silent judgment people give when they do not say anything. But you feel everything." Her voice faded into a whisper. "I could not bear the idea of you seeing me like that." Those words carried a weight no stage performance could ever express. It was not admiration based on fame. It was respect based on quiet character. She did not fear losing the world. She feared losing the respect of the one person who treated everyone with dignity. Keanu finally spoke, his voice gentle, steady, almost like a slow anchor dropped into a storm. "Thank you for trusting me." He did not ask her why she left school. He did not ask her why she hid it. He did not ask her why it mattered so much. He only honored the courage it took to speak. But Sandra was not done. There was still more. And the next part was heavier. The paper you saw earlier, it was not just any paper. It was my unfinished enrollment form. I kept it as a promise to myself. One day I would return. One day I would finish what I left behind. But I never did. The years passed. The success grew. The world assumed I had everything. But inside, I still felt like the girl who failed to complete what mattered most to her mother. Her voice broke slightly when she said the word mother. I told myself I would show her that life gave me something better than a degree. But the truth is, she never wanted fame for me. She wanted peace for me. She wanted me to walk through life without fear of being exposed. A tear escaped her eye, not dramatic, not forced, just real. And now someone else has that paper. Someone who can release the truth any moment. Not with kindness, not with respect, but with the intention to embarrass. And I cannot let that happen. Not because of pride, but because my mother's dream deserves better than to be turned into gossip. Silence settled again, deep and heavy. This was not a scandal. This was not a crime. This was the story of a human being who succeeded in the world but carried a wound nobody could see. Keanu did not comfort her with empty words like, "It does not matter," or "people will understand." He knew pain does not heal through shortcuts. Pain heals through truth and dignity. He finally said, "You do not have to carry this alone." Those words were not dramatic. They were not poetic, but they landed in her soul like warmth in winter. Before she could respond, her phone buzzed again. Same sender, new message. She did not open it, but the preview line on the screen was enough to send a shiver down her spine. "I know your secret. Maybe the world should know too." Her breath caught in her chest. This was no longer a quiet fear. This was now a countdown. Keanu looked at her, and for the first time, there was a hint of sternness in his voice. Not at her, but at the situation. "Who is that person?" She hesitated, not because she did not know, but because saying their name made the threat more real. "Someone from my past," she said softly. "Someone who knew me before all this. Someone who thinks exposing me will give them power, and maybe it will." Keanu stayed calm, but his silence held a quiet strength. Sandra looked at him, eyes full of fear and exhaustion. "I do not know what to do," she whispered. Keanu placed one hand lightly on the step beside him, grounding the moment, and said something she did not expect. "The truth cannot destroy you if you own it before someone else uses it," the sentence echoed. In her mind, like a bell struck in an empty hall. She had spent years hiding to protect herself. Now she realized hiding was the thing hurting her most. But before she could process it fully, a sudden loud knock on the studio door startled them both. A crew assistant rushed toward them holding a tablet. "Sandra, you need to see this," he said out of breath. She stood up slowly, fearing what was coming. The assistant turned the screen toward her. Her face went pale. Someone had just posted an anonymous message online hinting that a beloved actress with a perfect image is hiding a past failure that would shock everyone. No name was mentioned, but the timing was clear. The threat had already begun, and now the world was no longer silent. The tablet screen felt heavier than its weight as Sandra stared at the anonymous post. The world outside still looked normal. Cars passed, the sky shifted toward evening, the studio lights flickered. Yet inside her, everything had changed. The fear she had silenced for years was no longer hidden in shadows. It had stepped into daylight, and now it could grow, spread, and destroy everything she worked for if she did nothing. Keanu watched her expression closely. He did not speak. He did not try to calm her with weak reassurance. He simply stood still, holding space in a world that felt like it was collapsing around her. The assistant waited, confused, unaware of the storm beneath the silence. "Should I report this as fake?" he asked. Sandra did not answer right away. Her mind was spinning through every possibility. Denial, silence, legal action, hiding, running. All the strategies she had used before. All the strategies that failed her now. She gently took the tablet from his hands, stared at the words again, then handed it back. "No," she said softly. "Not yet." The assistant nodded, unsure, then walked away, leaving her alone with Keanu again. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The air felt thick, not with panic, but with the weight of choice. She knew now that silence would not save her. Silence had already lost its power. She sat down again, her back leaning against the cool metal wall of the trailer, the same spot where she had almost confessed earlier. Except now the world was pushing her faster than she was ready to move. Keanu walked over and sat beside her again. The same way, no distance, no judgment. She whispered, "This is how it starts, isn't it? Not with truth, but with pieces of it twisted into something ugly." Keanu spoke quietly. Truth without your voice becomes a weapon in someone else's hands. His words did not feel like advice. They felt like a reminder of something she already knew but never wanted to face. She closed her eyes for a moment and said, "I spent years afraid the world would judge me. Now all that fear is becoming real." Keanu turned slightly toward her. "Fear does not mean you are weak. It means you care." She opened her eyes and looked at him. "But I do not want the world to see me as a liar." "Then you tell the story before they do," he replied simply. The sentence landed inside her like a slow awakening. She let out a tired breath. "You make it sound easy." Keanu shook his head slightly. "It is not easy, but it is honest. And honesty feels lighter than fear." Sandra stared at the ground, tracing a line on the floor with her shoe. "What if it ruins everything?" Keanu answered without hesitation. "Then it ruins what was never built on truth. But what survives after honesty is real, stronger, steady." There was no lecture in his tone, no superiority, only lived wisdom. She thought about all the roles she played in films. Strong women, brave women, honest women. She made them real for audiences. But now she realized she had not allowed herself to live the same truth she gave her characters. And suddenly, she felt something she had not felt in years. Not confidence, not peace, but courage. A small, quiet, trembling courage that grows only when a person has nothing left to hide. She looked at Keanu and said, "I think I have been running from the wrong fear. I was scared people would judge me for not finishing school, but now I see the real fear was not the truth. It was the shame I attached to it." Keanu nodded gently. Shame survives in silence. But once spoken, it loses its teeth. A long silence followed, but this time it was not heavy. It was shifting, transforming. A silence of change rather than pain. She stood up slowly, her posture still wounded, but no longer collapsed. "I need time to think, not to escape, just to breathe and prepare." Keanu stood up too, not blocking her, not directing her, simply walking beside her. As they moved toward the exit, the fading light caught their shadows on the studio wall. Two figures walking in quiet unity. There was no music, no applause, no dramatic camera angle. Only truth, slowly rising. Before they reached the parking lot, Sandra stopped and turned to him. "You have not once asked me what the secret is," she said softly. Keanu looked into her eyes and replied, "I do not need to know the details to respect the person carrying them." That sentence hit her deeper than any comfort could. Respect without curiosity. Support without invasion. That was rare. That was sacred. And it was in that moment she understood something important. She was not afraid because she was weak. She was afraid because her truth deserved dignity, and embarrassment had been stealing that dignity for years. She looked at the ground, then back at him. "Thank you," she said, her voice steady for the first time. Keanu gave a small nod, the kind that meant more than words. As they walked toward the cars, Sandra's phone buzzed again. She did not even need to look to know who it was. But this time, she did not panic. She opened the message. Last chance to respond. "You stay silent, I go public?" She locked the screen. Keanu watched her reaction. Not intruding, she exhaled slowly and said, "I am done being silent." For the first time, those words did not sound like fear. They sounded like strength returning to its owner. But as they reached the lot, a new complication appeared. A reporter was waiting near the gate, holding a phone, already recording, eyes sharp with curiosity. Not yet aware, not yet ready, but already circling. The world was not waiting anymore. The countdown had truly begun. The reporter outside the studio gate held the phone like a weapon, not yet knowing what story he was hunting, but already ready to chase it. Sandra paused when she saw him, her heart tightening, not because she feared the question, but because she finally understood what made this moment different from every interview she had ever given. This time, the story would not be about her career, her image, or her roles. It would be about the one truth she had never spoken, and once spoken, it could not be taken back. Keanu noticed the shift in her breathing, but did not step in front of her or shield her. Protection does not always mean blocking the world. Sometimes it means letting a person walk through it with strength they did not know they had. Before the reporter could speak, Sandra raised a hand gently, not to silence him, but to steady herself. "Not today," she said in a calm voice. The reporter blinked, surprised by the softness of her tone. He lowered the phone slightly, confused. He was expecting panic, denial, maybe even anger. But instead, she walked past him with quiet dignity, leaving no scene to record. Keanu followed, a silent presence, letting her lead her own moment. Once they reached her car, she leaned against the door, eyes closed, breath slow but deeper than before. "Every day of my life, I tried to control what people think of me," she said. "But now I realize there is something stronger than image. Truth." Keanu nodded lightly. "Image can be taken. Truth cannot." Those words did not erase her fear, but they began to remove the shame attached to it. Later that evening, Sandra sat in her living room, lights dim, phone silent, the hidden paper resting on the table in front of her. It looked so small now, so simple. Yet it had shaped years of insecurity, silence, and fear. The very thing she thought would destroy her was just a piece of paper with unfinished lines. She touched it gently. "You controlled me for too long," she whispered. Her phone buzzed again. Another message from the same person. Same threat, same pressure. But this time, her reaction was different. She did not tremble. She did not panic. She simply read it and set the phone down. She walked to the window and looked out at the night sky, calm and endless. She finally said aloud the truth she once hid even from herself. "I am not broken because I did not finish. I am whole because I kept going." The moment was small, but it was a revolution inside her. The next morning, she returned to the set, not with fake confidence, but with quiet resolve. People could feel the difference. The crew sensed a shift in her energy. Not heavy, not fragile, but grounded. Keanu was already there, reading his script as usual, calm as still water. She walked toward him, not with hesitation, but purpose. "I am going to speak," she told him. He looked up, eyes steady. "To who? To everyone," she said. "Not because I owe an explanation, but because the truth deserves my voice before it becomes someone else's lie." Keanu gave a small, approving nod. "I will be there, not to speak for you, just to stand with you." She smiled for the first time in days. A real smile. The kind built from courage, not performance. Before she could say anything else, someone from the crew interrupted. "They want both of you on stage for a surprise cast introduction," he said. The timing felt strange, almost symbolic. Sandra and Keanu walked together toward the small stage set up outside. Lights were already arranged, cameras ready, press scattered around. As they stepped up, the director joked lightly, "Just smile and wave. Keep it simple." But Sandra knew her moment was no longer meant to be simple. The crowd settled. Flashes went off. Questions began. Then one voice cut through clearly. "Sandra, is it true there's a story about your past coming out soon?" This was it. The question she always feared. For years she would have smiled, deflected, changed the subject, protected the image, not the truth, but now she stepped forward. Her voice carried no acting, no script, no mask. "Yes," she said calmly, "there is something from my past. And before anyone else tells it, I want to tell it myself." The crowd quieted. Cameras tilted. Even the director looked stunned. Keanu did not speak. He just stood beside her, hands relaxed, expression respectful, making sure the moment stayed hers. Sandra continued, "I did not finish school. I left because life got hard. I thought I would return one day, but success kept moving and I kept pretending. I did not lie, but I hid, and I let that silence grow into fear." Her voice wavered but did not break. "I carried shame for something that did not make me less, and I allowed the world to convince me that unfinished meant unworthy. But I am done believing that. I am not afraid anymore. I am not less. I am human. And humans are allowed to grow in incomplete ways." People listened, not with shock, not with judgment, but with something unexpected. Respect. And then something happened. No one expected. Keanu stepped forward beside her, not to take the spotlight, but to create balance. He took the script in his hand, the one for the next scene, and in front of everyone, he intentionally misread a line. Not dramatically. Not like a joke. Just a real mistake. The crew froze. Keanu paused, looked at the page, then said with a smile, "Imperfection is normal. We all learn differently. We all grow differently, and no one deserves to feel small for it." A light laugh spread through the crowd. A warm laugh. A human one. And in that moment, the atmosphere changed. Sandra looked at him, stunned, realizing what he had done. Not mocked her. Not defended her. Normalized her. Leveled the ground. Turned flaws into shared humanity. And for the first time in her life, she did not feel like the girl who failed something. She felt like a woman who survived something. The press got their recording. The world would soon hear the story. But it would not be a scandal. It would be a testimony. Yet just when she felt relief rising in her chest, her phone buzzed again. She checked it quickly. A new message. "You think the truth is only about school. You forgot what else I know." Her blood ran cold again. The threat was not over. The secret had another layer, and the final reveal had not yet arrived. The new message on Sandra's phone was only one line, but it felt heavier than the world she had just learned to stand up to. "You think the truth is only about school. You forgot what else I know." The air around her felt still again, not like silence, but like a held breath. The courage she had just built began to tremble. She had spoken her truth. She had taken back her voice. She had freed herself from the shame of the past. But now another shadow rose, one she had buried deeper than the first. Keanu noticed the change in her expression. She did not have to explain. He already understood that the story was not finished. She looked at her phone for a long time, her fingers cold, her mind replaying memories she had locked away even from herself. There was more. Another truth. Another reason she hid. Something even more private than her unfinished education, and now someone wanted to use it against her. Later that day, she sat alone in her car, parked near a quiet park. The world outside looked normal. People walked their dogs, children laughed on swings, an old couple shared a candy bar on a bench. But inside, she felt as if time had stopped. She whispered to herself, "How many parts of my life do I have to defend before I am allowed to live it?" She did not cry, not this time. Sadness was not what she felt. It was exhaustion, the kind that sinks into bones. She replayed the text in her head. It was not about her mother, not about school, not about her career. It was about the moment she had never told anyone, not because it was shameful, but because it was painful in a way words never captured. Her childhood, her silence during those years, the weight she carried for someone she loved, and the day she chose to leave not just school, but the world that made her feel invisible. She breathed in, breathed out, then finally called Keanu. He answered on the second ring. "I am here," he said, those 3 words again. A promise without pressure. "Can we meet?" she asked. "Wherever you need," he replied. She told him the park. He said he was already on the way. She waited, sitting on the edge of the fountain, hands folded, eyes distant. When Keanu arrived, he did not speak right away. He just sat beside her. No questions. No assumptions. She finally turned toward him and said, "The truth I shared today was only half of it. There is something else, something I never wanted the world to know. Not because it would ruin my image, but because speaking it means reliving it." Keanu looked at her with the same kind patience he had shown since the first moment he noticed her silence on set. She continued, her voice low but steady. "The reason I left school was not only money. It was because I spent my childhood taking care of someone who could not take care of themselves. Someone I loved. Someone who needed me more than my future did at that time." Her eyes filled, but still no tears fell. "I hid it because people love to turn pain into headlines. They call it inspiration, but they strip away the humanity. And I could not let anyone twist something sacred into entertainment." Keanu understood instantly. Not the details, but the meaning. "You protected someone," he said softly. She nodded, and this time the tears finally came. Not from weakness, but from relief of finally being understood. "I never wanted applause for it," she said. "I never wanted sympathy. I just wanted that part of my life to remain untouched. Private, not judged. Not turned into a story about what I sacrificed. It was never a sacrifice. It was love." Keanu looked at her, eyes gentle, voice even softer. "Then let the world know it was love, not weakness. Not shame, love." She wiped her face, calming her breath. "But the person threatening me does not care about that. They want attention. They want drama. They want to own the story." Keanu paused, then asked, "Did you ever think that maybe the story needs to be told so no one else can use it against you again?" She looked at him, deeply, and something changed inside her. She realized she was no longer speaking from fear. She was speaking from truth. And truth spoken freely is stronger than truth stolen by force. But before she could reply, Keanu said something unexpected. "I know what it feels like to live with something painful from the past that people misunderstand. I know what it feels like to be judged for something that was never wrong. I know what it feels like when the world sees a headline and not a human." She looked at him surprised. She had always seen him as calm, wise, at peace. But now she saw something else in his eyes. He had pain, too. "You never talk about your past," she said. "That is because people think silence means perfection," he replied. "But sometimes silence just means healing. And healing is slower when the world watches." His words were quiet, but they sank deep. For the first time since the chaos began, she did not feel alone. She felt understood. Not as a celebrity, not as a success story, but as a person with wounds and strength living side by side. She took a long breath. "I think I am ready," she said. He nodded. "Then speak it. Not to defend, but to free." The next morning, Sandra announced a live press statement. Not a manager's note, not a lawyer's denial. A direct message spoken in her own voice. Social media exploded with guesses. Tabloids prepared headlines. The anonymous threat account posted again, assuming they had forced her into panic. But when Sandra stepped in front of the cameras, the world saw something they did not expect. She was calm. She was steady, and she was done hiding. She said, "I want to share something because it belongs to me, not to anyone who wants to use it against me. I left school because life asked me to grow up faster than most people. I cared for someone I loved, and I do not regret a single day of that choice. I did not fail. I prioritized love over expectation, and I would do it again." The room was silent, not shocked, not judgmental. Silent with respect, she continued. "I finished many things in life. Some the world praised, some the world never saw. But the one thing I finally finished today is silence, and I am proud of that." And then, without planning it, she looked to the side. Keanu was there, not speaking, not holding a spotlight, just standing still, hands behind him, eyes soft, like a lighthouse in a storm that finally cleared. And in that moment, something powerful happened. People did not applaud the secret. People applauded the courage. Within hours, the anonymous account died. The threat lost power, because truth spoken freely has no handle for blackmail. News outlets tried to dramatize the story, but the public reaction was different than expected. Comments flooded in. "This is not scandal. This is strength. Respect for her honesty. A life lesson for all of us. Success means nothing if we lose humanity." But the most shared quote came from an unexpected source someone had recorded. Keanu's quiet line after her speech. "Truth without kindness becomes a weapon, but truth with kindness becomes a bridge." That line spread everywhere, and suddenly, the story was not about secrets anymore. It was about humanity, dignity, courage. Weeks later, on the final day of filming, the cast gathered for a farewell photo. Someone from the crew handed Sandra a wrapped box. Smiling. "From everyone," they said. She opened it slowly. Inside was a single paper, a new enrollment form, not filled, not signed, just blank. And on the top, written in simple handwriting, "Not because you need it, because you deserve the choice." She did not cry. She smiled, because now the form was no longer a reminder of failure. It was a symbol of freedom. She looked at Keanu, who stood nearby, his eyes kind, his silence full. "Thank you," she said. He replied, "You thanked the wrong person. You did this yourself." She nodded. But inside, she knew something deeply true. Sometimes we free ourselves. Sometimes we just need one person who refuses to judge us while we do it. When the cameras turned off, when the movie ended, when the world moved on, one lesson remained. People are not ruined by the truth. They are ruined by the fear of telling it. And Sandra never feared it again.